So what exactly is West Frisian? In the last video, I looked at where in the world Frisian was spoken, and the biggest Frisian area is that of West Frisian. But what exactly is the West Frisian variant of Frisian? Geographically, West Frisian is the name given to the Frisian language as it's spoken in the Dutch province of Fryslân in the north of the Netherlands. It can further be subdivided into several different dialect forms that vary to certain degrees. And yet, if you put a text into Google Translate, or for a far better translation, Frysk.nl, or if you read most books published by the Frisian Afûk or follow an Afûk Frisian language course, you will find a standard variety of West Frisian. So, how did this arise, and what exactly is the standard, sometimes also called Afûk West Frisian? As with many other languages, the need for standardization where everyone spells Frisian the same way came with a heightened period of publication. But really, the story starts much earlier than that. The first written Frisian, in a sense, is a series of carved runic inscriptions from the early Middle Ages. Later, in the High Middle Ages, manuscripts appear written in Old Frisian, with clear signs of an east-west split, likely a sign of changes in the spoken language as well. The Old West Frisian would go on to become West Frisian as we know it today. However, around 1500, the Free Frisian lands were conquered by neighbouring powers. As a result, Frisian loses its status as an administrative language to Dutch and Low German, and for the next century and a half, it disappears from the written record entirely. That is until 1639, when author and poet by the name of Gijsbert Japicx decided to pen a poem in his Memetaal, his native West Frisian. It would be the first of many. It's clearly Frisian, but the way it's spelled is a little different to how we might spell it today. Unfortunately, Japicx's poem would be a solitary comet in the dark, and following his death, Frisian would largely disappear from the page again. However, by the early 19th century, intellectuals were being swept up in a new tide of national romanticism, where the local and the regional were celebrated as the nucleus of the pure national spirit. People started to write in Frisian again, but found there was no clear way of spelling their own language that had for more than a century been only a spoken medium. Some proposed using the same spelling that Gijsbert Japicx had used in the 17th century. Others that they base it on the medieval Old Frisian spelling. Perhaps they could spell it using the same system as the well-established Dutch spelling, or would it be better to just spell Frisian the way that it was pronounced? As more and more was being written, the debate heated up, until in 1879 the Seeltersk van Friese taal en schriftkennissen came up with a new spelling that was largely adopted by the Frisian literate community. It would become known as the Selskipstavering, or society spelling. In 1900, society member Waling Dijkstra would use the spelling in his Fries Woordenboek, his Frisian dictionary. But as the 20th century wore on, more and more issues started to present themselves about the spelling and its consistency. In 1938, the Fryske Academie was established in the Frisian capital Ljouwert. Following the Second World War, when many bookshops had no more Frisian books on their shelves, the time was right for a spelling reform. Given that it had come from the Academie, it would be referred to as the Academiestavering. New discussions on it began in the 60s, as voices sounded for another far-reaching reform to change the spelling. Others wanted to stick with a more conservative version of the Academiestavering. In 1969, the Provinciale Staten, the provincial government of Fryslân, weighed in and decided to choose a middle path, choosing to follow a spelling system based on phonology that had been proposed by the Fryske Academie. It is this spelling system that is generally still used today, with a few much smaller tweaks on specific sounds and how they should be spelled happening in the ensuing decades between then and now. But given all these decisions on a standard, Which variant or dialect of West Frisian actually became the standard, or is it a mismatch? The answer is somewhere between the two, though as a base it was the dialect of the town of Grou in the centre of Fryslân that was chosen. This was largely because of the family of writers, father and two sons, Halbertsma, who came from Grou and were very prolific early writers of Frisian in the 19th century. The Grou dialect of West Frisian is considered as part of the Frysk or Clay Frisian group of dialects, something that has had a clear impact on the standard. Frysk is spoken in approximately the western third of the province. Using it as a base, we see a variety of forms entering the standard language. So we see that the standard forms are taken from Frysk as opposed to various other dialects. So we see in the form for you, which in Frysk is do and Frysk is do, that the Frysk version do was chosen. Similarly, we see the Frysk pronunciations of hij, zij, mij being the standard the spelling was based on rather than the Frysk he, she and me. We see in various other dialects where different forms exist that the standard is usually chosen from the most commonly occurring. So we have boeter and schippe rather than what's found in Dongeradeel, boter en schepe. This is also true for words like snijden and kaart, where these variants are chosen rather than the dialect variations in de Westerijn, where this would be snijden and koot. It's also true that we find broken forms where the sound change of breaking into a diphthong, so words like dwaske and squalle, rather than the variant without breaking found in the Zuidwesthoeken, duske and skulle. The broken forms are chosen as standard Frisian, as these are found in Frysk and Frysk, but then Zuidwesthoeks is ignored. While the Grou Frysk formed the basis, in some cases other forms were chosen if these forms were more different than the word in Dutch. Sometimes this is because Dutch words have entered the Frisian language, but as related West Germanic languages, some words that appear the same in Frisian and Dutch are both correct and not borrowed. For example, the standard Frisian promotes the use of heel, which is native to only a small part of the northern Frysk region, versus the more common hail, which is the same as Dutch hail. Other examples are the final schwa in words like moetse and kiste, to make them more different to the Dutch. In recent years, though, the academies and other institutions' approaches to the standard have changed, becoming more accepting of certain dialect variation within the language. Indeed, if you look on the most up-to-date online dictionary Frisker.nl, you will find both Frysk and Frysk variants. In his article on the evolving Frisian standard in dictionaries, Pieter Duif says, quote, "The fact that Frisian still shows a considerable degree of tolerance with respect to the various dialects is due to the fact that many Frisians felt and still feel that written Frisian must reflect the wealth of the language. However, it is notably felt that not all Frisian dialects enhance the Frisian written language. The clay and woodland Frisian variants are the ones generally included in this tolerant standard language, whereas southwest quarter elements are consistently rejected. This is because it was felt that the southwest quarter dialect would contain too many un-Frisian Dutch elements." That's open access and linked below if you want to read more about the formation of the Frisian standard language and the role of dictionaries. Another current and historic issue is less between dialects of Frisian, but between Frysk, or perfect Frisian, and Min Frysk, or Frisian that has been more influenced by Dutch. But that's something for another video. More about Frysk specifically in the next video in the series. So until then, ik wie Hilbert en dit wie het Frysk. Ontjen.